Some fine motor skills that can be important to look for. A big one that we see kids not doing very well is what we call a pincer grasp. So that's just using the index finger and thumb, or a tripod grasp, so first two fingers and the thumb. If your child's not picking up small toys or objects like that, if they're still kind of combing or raking their fingers to pick things up, that tells me that there's muscles in the hand or nervous system connections that aren't taking place, and that can make it difficult for your child to continue to do things in the future and to manipulate small objects. A child should be able to, probably not really refined, but they should be able to consistently pick up small items by the age of 1. If your child's a year or over and they're not doing this at all, definitely a concern. If they're just a little inconsistent about it, wait a little bit, but by 2 or 3 they should definitely be using those skills. If they're still raking by a couple years old, then that's a skill that really should be worked on to make sure that they're going to have that foundation for future skills. And then as they get a little older, some of the skills that they'll be working on is what we call bilateral coordination. That's using 2 hands together. So as infants, kids will grab items with 2 hands and they'll just play with both their hands in the middle. Their hands are kind of doing the same thing, but together. As they get older, you think about putting on a button-up shirt or unscrewing the lid of a jar, where your hands maybe have to work opposite each other, or one hand is pinching and the other hand is pulling something. You're coordinating your hands to do 2 things together. And that can be a skill that a lot of kids have deficits. So if your child is having a hard time with buttons or opening containers, or even if you're noticing like they're playing with Legos and it takes them a long time to line up the pieces, if you get those big blocks and they're kind of shaky all over the place, having a hard time putting things together, that can be an indication that the 2 sides of the body are not working together how they're supposed to be. Some other skills that are important to be able to work on is just hand strength. So if your child is having a hard time pulling apart those Legos that they're maybe having a hard time putting together, that can show that just the small intrinsic muscles of the hands are not strong enough. And that can lead to difficulties down the road, like as an adult, if you're trying to, I don't know, change a tire on the side of the road and you just don't have the hand strength. I know I can never open my own lids, and that's a problem for me. So if they're ever having a hard time pulling things apart, or if you notice they're playing with Play-Doh and all they kind of do is like fist it, if they're not really like using their fingers to dig into it, that can be another sign that those muscles are a little bit weak. And a final skill that is important that I think a lot of people don't necessarily even know to look for is what we call in-hand manipulation. So that's the ability, if you're holding something in one hand, you can move it around. I think the classic example is if you pick up your pencil backwards, you can rotate it to be the right way. You don't have to like set it down and rotate your hand and pick it back up. You can just move things within your hand to be oriented how you need them to be. And what we notice when kids don't have that skill, you'll notice they'll maybe pick something up, pass it to the other hand, turn their hand, and then pass it back. So they're actually doing kind of this 2-handed back and forth to slowly rotate the object how they need it to be. Or maybe they'll pick up something and then like push it against a body part to get it to move. Maybe their mouth, maybe their shoulder, maybe their tummy. They're using the rest of their body to help stabilize those pieces. So if you're noticing, I play with a lot of pegboards, like a light bright or something like that. If you're noticing that they're constantly picking up and passing items back and forth between their hands before they're using it, how they're supposed to be using it, that can be a sign that those muscles that help rotate things in their hands are not functioning how they should be.